It has just gone 11:30, and a very warm welcome to local crime and spy author Jim Reay.
Good morning, Simone, and to your listeners.
Nice to have you in the studio this morning.
Nice to be here.
I'm very excited to talk about you and also your stories. Little background on Jim. He's a former high school principal and senior public servant. He was educated to postgraduate level in Britain. You worked in London for several years before you emigrated to our fabulous nation to continue your career development. And 11 years ago you retired and you started writing. So fast forward to now, 11 years later, you have released 9 titles, and your latest, PM by Accident. Very
Yes.
timely with the election coming up, yeah?
Indeed.
It's due for release in June. So we talked very briefly on the phone the other day, Jim, and you said that you grew up on the east coast of Scotland. Our very own Mike Bennett is another Scotsman. He's a big fan of the Bay City Rollers, actually. You too?
We know the Bay City Rollers.
I was a fan as well. So what sort of books were you into when you grew up?
Well, Treasure Island and Kidnapped by Robert Louis Stevenson.
Fabulous.
The Lost World by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle and his Sherlock Holmes movies. You see, these are adventure stories with mysteries and crime. If you think about me as a little boy on the east coast of Scotland, reading Treasure Island and looking out through a frosted window, I'm seeing the Hispaniola sailing towards the Caribbean and palm trees.
Stop it, I'm going cold.
And this little boy is coming from the security of the village he grew up in, and he meets Long John Silver.
Wow.
Wooden leg, parrot on the shoulder, extreme extrovert. It's so different. And as they sail towards the treasure on Treasure Island, he slowly starts to realise that Long John's a villain. He's not just as nice as he seems.
Exactly.
And so he's got to go through all of those adventures, and that's the greatness of the way Robert Louis Stevenson wrote the stories. He captivates you, takes you in, takes you from the security of looking out through my frosted window, through all these adventures, and then we come out happy at the end because you've got a happy ending.
Yeah,
So I
fabulous.
try to write my stories along that sort of model.
Wow, that sounds sensational. They sound awesome. So, obviously they inspired you in a very big way.
They did. Maybe the best way to illustrate it, one of my most popular books is Searching for Siobhan, which is set in Brisbane. And it's a high school teacher, Harry Boyd, who's in his 30s. And he's got a lodger, Siobhan Doyle, who's a flame-haired Irish reporter in her mid-20s. And she goes missing. She doesn't come home.
Right.
And he's prepared a meal for her, which doesn't impress him too much at all. And the only clue he has is the clue texted to him, beyond Compton, Suscar, maybe Argus. It
Right.
means nothing to him.
Yeah.
So he goes to the police, and they're busy. They've got real crimes to deal with,
Yeah.
and they don't see a crime. She's adult. She could just be missing by accident. So unfortunately, Harry has to become a reluctant detective and go and try and find out what's happened to his missing lodger, because she still hasn't come back.
Yeah, right. Very
And this
intriguing.
takes you into a very exciting place. And probably to explain how I got there, which may well even be your next question,
Okay.
how do you get to this?
Yeah.
This story is set in 2009. In 2009, I was sitting at the traffic lights on the corner of Kessels Road and Mains Road, heading south on Mains Road. There's the QE2 stadium on your right, and back then it had a lot of trees where the netball centre is today.
Yeah.
And on the left there was a piano store.
Yes.
And
I
there
think
was-
we all know it well.
Ah, you do?
Yeah.
Well, that's terrific. So at the time, a kookaburra flew across in front of me and landed on the piano store stein.
Right.
And I looked to see where it had flown from, obviously from a tree, but I actually wanted to see it. And in the car sitting next to me, in the lane next, there was a girl in the back seat crying.
Oh.
Now, she could have been crying for a million different reasons. She'd stubbed her toe, she'd played up at home, or the dog had died, anything could have happened. And I filed that message away. I wrote it down because I was writing lots of things at the time. So when I started to write Searching for Siobhan, I put Siobhan in my seat in that car. And she's sitting there. She's supposed to be going down to Garden City to report on a fashion show.
Yeah.
But she sees the kookaburra, she sees the girl with a tear running down her cheek, and she thinks, what if something's really bad?
Right.
What if I recognise that and I do nothing about it. So she follows the car. She follows the car over Compton.
Wow.
I wonder where Compton is now, you all say.
Yeah, just down the road, near the road.
Isn't that right? Yeah, so and that's where it is. And she doesn't see anything untoward. And
so were you first with here in Compton, down in Compton? You know that song? There's a new rap song, or fairly recently, coming to Compton?
Not quite, but I'm glad to hear of it. So she's down there over Compton. She parks in a quiet street thinking, oh, well, I'll just go back to Garden City now and nothing's happened.
Yeah.
And a woman comes up and taps on her passenger side door. She's got a map in her hand. She's clearly confused, wanting directions. And as Siobhan leans across to help answer this lady's question, the driver's door clicks open behind her. And then there's 3 dots.
Oh.
Now you cannot not turn the page over.
Whoa, that's exciting.
So Siobhan gets involved in another world, and it's the same idea as Treasure Island.
Wow, that sounds so intriguing.
They get you taken into a world where you don't normally want to go. Man, it comes out well to me.
That sounds so good. I don't know. Well, Jim's actually given me a couple of copies to give away to our listeners today, and I don't know if I'm going to give it away now.
But you can read it first.
We will give them away, but
Yes.
not just yet. Well, I'll talk to you a little bit more, Jim, first before we do that. So when did you decide that you were going to put... Because these stories you were saying on the phone the other day, you've had them for ages and ages. So
I've had lots of stories in my head for years and years, and I've never had the time to write them down. So I retired in 2008, and I started to write down all these ideas just to see if I could make any sense of them. And when I got to the Searching for Siobhan story, I thought, wonder if I could write that so that it's reasonably good. And I sent the manuscript through to a competition at Varuna in Katoomba. Varuna's a writer's centre.
Yeah.
And so they had the inaugural Writers' Festival down there, and they selected my manuscript along with some others to go down there for a week in Katoomba. It's a lovely spot. And I worked with Morel Day, who's a fairly famous Australian crime writer, and the other people who were selected, and worked hard at that. So when I came back enthused, I kept writing. I wrote lots and lots of stories.
Yeah, 9 in all to date, in 11 years. That's huge.
There's a lot more than... There's a lot of things that have been written. These are the ones that are published. Yeah.
Well, not only have you written fiction with your Crime and Spy, but you've also dabbled in non-fiction, The Most Avoided Question, and also your first young adult fiction, Catching Legends, and you've also published short stories.
Yeah. So they're on my website.
Do you sleep?
Funnily enough, a lot of this writing is done at night.
Right.
And my wife got to the stage where she said, just get up and write.
Right.
Otherwise, I was scribbling little notes in the half dark, and yes, it doesn't work.
Right.
So, the short stories and all the information are on my website. It's Jim Reay, R-E-A-Y. If you just Google that, you'll get to my website.
Okay, so jimraywriter.net it is.
Yes.
So. Tell us about your publishing journey.
Radio. So this is a different story, because it's one thing to write, it's another thing to get your book published.
Yeah.
And I was full of enthusiasm after Varuna, and I thought, well, I've written a lot of stories, I'll see how I go. Sent them into the publishers, and they're in a commercial world, and I'm not a celebrity.
Yeah.
And they're looking for $1, and presumably they didn't see $1 in me. So I went to the smaller publishers in Queensland, and I found Ramskull Press, or in Brassall in Ipswich.
Yeah.
They're lovely people, Deb and Dave Edwards. I can recommend them. So they published my first book, Catching Legends, which was a spy, mystery, adventure set in central Queensland, but it goes off into Scotland, the Philippines, Singapore. Oh, sorry, I hit the microphone there. Sorry, folks. And into New Zealand. So, and it was a book of 200 pages, and really, Ramskull Press deal in books ideally 150 pages or less. So I was at the top of their range. Cool. They also let me have their shopping cart to sell my books, so that we could send them out to anywhere in the world, and they've been lovely with that. But I realised that most of my books are 300 pages or more.
Right.
And so I needed to do something else. So I contacted Brisbane Self-Publishing, which is Kirsty Ogden.
Yeah,
and
Kirsty, she's awesome.
Kirsty she's a graphic designer and a former librarian, and a knowledge of the publishing business, which is very good.
Yeah.
she edits non-fiction. I was writing fiction, so she put me onto Patrice Shaw.
Yeah.
And Patrice has edited all of my books since.
Right.
It's the best professional development I've ever had.
Okay.
So not only do these editors know the style manual, but they have the ability to sort of show and not tell.
Yeah.
So
do you think it's important for people that are writing, just so we've got writers now, to get a publisher, to get an editor to go through their work, or?
I think if they've got the money, because editors are doing it for a living, so
Yeah.
they're paid at an hourly rate.
Yeah, right.
And so you've got to make sure your work is reasonably polished before you send it to an editor.
Yeah.
You don't just send your scraps of writing.
Yeah.
And if it's reasonably polished, get a quote.
Okay.
And once you've got the quote, you can work out your budget and then go from there. But they'll improve the writing.
Yeah, right.
No end. And
you probably learn from them as well.
Absolutely. So Patrice would say to me, that sentence is very good, but if you wrote it that way, would it be better? Would it get the message across better? Or this needs to be in direct speech rather than in narrative?
Yeah.
She's right.
Yeah. That's good. Well, you've got the creativity, you do. You need someone to bring that out, or, to help you put it in correct English in it.
And the other thing is, when you're writing, it's speed writing a story down. You tend to miss a lot of little things.
Yeah.
I'm just appalled at the number of ahs and ths that I miss. Even though I've read,
No comma, no question mark in there.
I've read it so often. So yes.
Okay, so I want to talk about, because it's very timely with the federal election this Saturday, your new novel set for release next month is called PM by Accident. Hopefully it's not a story about another member in Cabinet taking over for the top job. It's quietly. But seriously.
No, it's not.
Seriously.
It's Prime Minister by Accident, and it's written with two strands. So it's like the plaits in a girl's hair.
Okay.
So one strand is Justin Kipps. He's a 21-year honours graduate, lives in Brisbane, lives around Belmont and Capalaba, that area.
Yeah.
And he's clever in the sense that he's smart. He's debated for Queensland. He's been a Lions Youth of the Year finalist. He's clever that way, but he's naive in so many other ways. And one of the things he's naive about is he posted a blog which is called The Manifesto. And a Sydney shock jock read it and blew thunder. You can imagine which Sydney shock jock it might be.
Okay, I think everyone can.
And so the shock jock rubbished him very cruelly on the radio and on the breakfast TV, upset Justin's mother. The whole thing just went pear-shaped. But social media picked this up.
Right.
And it didn't just get tweeted once or 20 times or 100 times or 100,000 times.
Whoa.
It was 500,000 times. It had gone viral.
Yeah, right.
To the extent that the people in Parliament House who run the party organisations had to do something and shut this fellow up.
Oh, that sounds good.
So that's one strand.
Right.
The other strand is at the same time that this is happening, the Capital Territory detective Sarah Power, that's power for women, you see.
Yeah, nice.
Luke
nice.
Dexter, they watch a male body being pulled out of the bottom of the dam which holds back Lake Burley Griffin.
Oh,
Man's wearing expensive clothes. He's clearly been killed, murdered, not just fallen off. And he's got no ID on him.
okay.
Nothing in his pockets. It's unusual. So that's the other strand, because it turns out that this man is not the best of people. He's the criminal. He's the netherworld.
Oh.
And he works for people who are after power in Canberra. They're the ones who dig the dirt and intimidate people to try and get power in political decisions.
Right.
So you've got two strands. And young Justin Kipps, the naive young man, is just walking into this world where the criminals operate.
Right.
So the question is, will corruption win out? Or will the impact of social media help Kipps lift politics into a new world? You see, because the message, this is quite a long book, but the message that's coming through is that there's another way to run our government from the way we do, still within the Australian Constitution.
Right.
And we probably all know this deep down, but we've never allowed ourselves to think that there's another way that government can run.
Well,
So
when is that coming out? Quickly.
this comes out in mid-June. So this story takes you on the journey of a young man who's trying to reform the political process. And it's at times humorous and it's at times very poignant. And it's written in short chapters, although it's a long book. So the idea is you read 3 or 4 chapters and you go to sleep.
Yeah, okay.
But it'll be hard because you'll have to turn the page because it's ... type work. And it may well change the way your listeners think.
Oh,
Mid-June.
That sounds so
Prime
intriguing.
Minister by accident.
Fantastic. Prime Minister by accident. Looking forward to that. So Jim's website is jimreaywriter.net, which is JIMREAY writer.net. And thank you so much for bringing in these books today to give away. So if you have got Searching for Siobhan, and we've got 2 copies of Searching for Siobhan to go, and it's got a picture of the Story Bridge on the front because they're local to our neck of the woods. And the chessboard also looks like a great one. When danger stalks on the peaceful Darling Downs, is it coincidence or the work of an international spy master?
I think I want to read that again. I write the books that I want to read.
Well done. Thank you so much for coming in this morning and talking to us, Jim.
It's been a pleasure. Simone.
Wonderful having you. So we have Monica next to the phone standing by. If you'd like a copy of Jim's latest books before the official release of Prime Minister by Accident, we've got the chessboard, 2 copies of that to go, and Searching for Siobhan. 380888 101 is the number. Will you sign the book for them, Jim?
Yeah.
All right, awesome. You have a wonderful day. Thank you for coming in, and I'll keep an eye on the website to see when that new book's coming out.
Lovely to chat to you.
All right,
Thanks
you take it
very
easy. Going to crank up some Taylor Swift and Brendan Urie now. It's called Me. 101 FM.